now.
Okay, thanks, Declan. Morning, everybody. Are you able to, first question, if somebody can maybe give me a thumbs up. Hopefully you're able to see my screen. Is that able to see your presentation? Thumbs up,
Yep.
lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. So morning, everybody. So by way of introduction, my name is Paul Daly. I've been working with Declan now for good number of years, over 10 plus at this stage, as a lecturer on a variety of these courses. I'm not currently working in the credit and collections business. I've taken a sideways move in the last kind of number of years, but before I took a sideways move, I did work. I started my credit collections journey back in 2002. Long time ago now. So I worked with Oracle for a year. Made pretty much all the mistakes that you're told not to make in the notes because this predated me going on this course. Then moved to Philips for a year and a bit as well. So learned from those mistakes and had a very successful kind of journey there. And then I moved to what became a little bit of a stop-start journey, which I won't go into, but I did ultimately end up in Accenture, and I was working with one of their diamond clients for 12 years. So did pretty much everything. Worked in collections, worked in credit. Did every piece of geography that I had. We broke it up and put it back together again a number of times, and then we also did it by lines of business as well, just because we could. So I managed most of that at one point or another as well. And I suppose most importantly of all, back in around what was it, 2007, 2008. I was sitting where you were sitting now. I was one of Declan's students. So it seems like a long time ago now, but that's a little bit about my journey. So what I'm going to do this morning is, so again, I suppose just to clarify, this is a whistle stop tour. We're not going to get into any real detail. Want to give you a little bit of an overview and a little bit of a flavor of what lies ahead of you for the next 15 weeks. So I'm going to talk you through some of that, give you an opportunity to ask any questions as we're going along, and we'll see how we get on. Okay. So, week one. So this is broken down. The whole thing is broken down into 15 individual weeks. Okay. Week one is what is known as your approach to credit. Okay. And there's a couple of different topics we're going to be covering in week one. We are going to take you through, in week one, we're going to take you through what is known as the attack model. Okay, so ATTACK attack model. The first A stands for assessment. First T stands for terms and conditions. Second T stands for teamwork. Second A stands for administration. C, not too surprisingly, stands for collections, and the K stands for KPIs. And I suppose the key message we'd be looking to take away from that is, I mean, you can have the best collections team in the world, but they are only to a certain degree, they're only responsible for their little part of the process. Okay, if you ignore all of the other parts of the process, you are not going to succeed in your collections. Okay, so the work starts well before the collectors get involved, and it continues on even after the collectors are finished. You know, if your top accounts are all reconciliation messes, the likelihood of the collectors being successful is relatively slim. So we're going to take you through that. That's one of the key messages to kind of to cover off at the beginning of module one. So we're going to take you through the attack model. We're going to talk to you why it's important to manage the processes and not just your collections part. And we'll talk to you a bit about the impact of delaying on action. So when you bill and when your ledger is 100% current, you are expecting to collect 100% of that ledger. If you wait 60 days and you allow your ledger to reach 60 days plus, your chance of collection is now dropping to 80%. Okay, so for every €1,000 on there, you're only expected now to collect 800 of that €1,000. You move on to 180 days, you're now down to 50%. And if you get all the way to 365 and that is still sitting on your ledger, your likelihood of collections is only 10%. So we're going to talk to you about the impact of delaying tackling your ledger. All right. The second thing we're going to cover off in module one is we're going to talk to you about the importance of consumer credit. And this is a particularly useful module because if you work in the area, it's very, very useful. But even if you don't, if you're a customer in the area, we have some very useful information in there in terms of how to manage things like your credit card, overdrafts, loans, and even PCP. So even if you don't work in the area, as an actual customer, it can be very, very useful. But we're going to talk to you about the various types types of consumer credit, what's the best way of using them, and if you work in the area, how to manage customers who have such products. So those are the two aspects that we will cover off in the first one. So we're going to ease you in a little bit gently in week one. We're going to talk to you about your approach to credit. We're also going to talk to you a bit about the importance of consumer credit in the market. Okay. Week two is credit policy. So we're going to talk to you about credit policy. So what is a credit policy? I may hear you ask, or I may not. What is a credit policy? A credit policy is essentially a playbook or a list of rules as to how you're going to embark on your credit and collections journey. So an example I could give is, okay, let's say it's a Monday morning, it's pouring rain, in November, you're not feeling particularly positive about the world. You arrive in, the first thing you do, as you should be doing, is probably check your bank account, okay? Not your own personal bank account, but the company's bank account. And you have been promised a payment on Friday evening from your largest customer, and that payment is not there. And your initial reaction is, okay, those guys, this is the third time in 3 consecutive months that they have promised money would be in the bank account by Friday evening. It is not in there. I'm fed up. I'm now going to put the account on hold. Okay, so understandable reaction, but the real reason you're putting the account on hold is it's Monday morning, it is raining, and you're a little bit fed up with the world, okay, which is not necessarily the best way of approaching or managing your credit and collections world. So what you have in your credit policy is you have essentially a playbook that says, okay, there will be flexibility. If the account is a small account, there will be no flexibility and the account goes on hold on day one. If they reach overdue, medium-sized account, they might be given maybe 3 days of flexibility, and only then will they go on hold. And maybe a large account, it'll be 7 days, and it won't be put on hold without alerting sales to it. Something like that, but some sort of playbook as to how you're going to embark on your credit and collections work. We're going to talk to you about both liberal and conservative credit policies. So if you have a product which is maybe reaching the end of its life and is in the last 12 months, and this time next year, nobody's really going to want it, you might well embark on a liberal credit policy or liberal credit approach for that product. You might say, okay, well, I'm going to allow people to buy the product now and they can pay me in 3 months' time, which is not something I would normally do. Or you can give maybe a higher credit limit to allow people to buy a bit more of the product. You can adopt a liberal credit approach. The opposite would be if you have a product where people may be queuing around the block to try to get it, because if they're queuing around the block, you don't need to offer credit terms. And the whole reason for offering credit, which we cover off in week one and probably touch on again as far as I remember in week two as well, is you only offer credit when you can sell more. Okay, so for that type of scenario, you will adopt a more conservative credit policy. So we're going to talk to you about that. And we have a sample credit policy in the notes for you to go through and give you an idea. So if you have a credit policy in your business, now might be a good time to or week two at the latest would be a good time to dust it off and have a look at it. If you don't have a credit policy in your business, we'll give you some good guidelines and indications as to how to write one. Week three, we cover off terms and conditions. So, okay, nice meaty slide there. What type of things are we going to be covering off? We're going to talk to you about the common mistakes that we see in terms of terms and conditions. Sometimes terms and conditions are too long, so customers never read them. Okay, if they're pages and pages and pages and pages, customers will never read them. Okay, and as a result, when a dispute arises, customers say, "Well, I didn't know," even if it is in clause 5, subsection 2. Okay. Alternatively, you could have credit terms and conditions that are too short. Okay. So very quickly, if you have terms and conditions that are too short, very quickly, you're going to encounter a scenario which is not covered in the terms and conditions. And all of this links in, I mean, everything we do in credit management and all of the guidelines and advice that we're giving you throughout the module, at the end of it all, it's not the only aim, but one of the key aims that we're giving you is we're trying to get you paid on time. Okay. All right. And if you have a scenario where there is no clause 5 or no subsection 2 that covers the scenario that you've encountered, you then have a bit of a deadlock. Okay, so you have the customer on one side and you got you on the other, and you're not, you could be negotiating for weeks or months, all the while that debt is getting older. Okay, so we'll talk to you about that. Okay. We're going to talk to you a bit about credit terms and what are, I suppose, traditionally known as credit limits, but the term we prefer is lines of credit. Okay, credit limits kind of suggest, okay, you get to 10,000, then you can go no higher. So it's kind of a negative connotation. Alternatively, you can have lines of credit, which is more positive. We are going to extend you a line of credit of 10,000, which makes the customer feel like they're important and they're getting something nice. Okay, so we're going to talk to you about some of that. We're talking about your credit terms, okay? So if somebody stopped me on the street when I was working in the credit business and said, okay, well, what are your terms and conditions? Sorry, what are your credit terms? I would say, well, 30 days, okay? And they actually varied from customer to customer, but I might have said, okay, potentially 30 days. But the key thing is, well, what does 30 days mean? Is that 30 days from the date on the invoice? Is it 30 days from the date the order is dispatched? 30 days from the date the order is placed? 30 days from the date the order is received? Because you can, if you can't answer that question clearly, you better believe the customers will take the approach and kind of say, well, okay, I'm going to assume it's the date that it was received. So I'm going to give myself some extra few days in order to make payment. And you've got to keep in mind, customers always, nearly always want to keep their cash as long as they possibly can. All right. So we're going to talk to you about that. We'll talk to you about what factors take into account when you're setting your terms and your credit terms. Okay. How strong is the customer would be a key one. What is the likelihood of that customer still being in business in 12 months' time? What are your margins? Can you afford to give them long credit terms, or do you need the cash coming in? And we talk a little bit more about that as we get into more of the nitty gritty of kind of credit assessment a little bit later in the course. We're also going to be talking about how much are we going to trust them with, and how long are we going to trust them for. Okay, so those are some of the key questions, some of the things we talk about in week 3. Okay. So I'm going to do one more and then I'll pause and give an opportunity for any questions. So week 4, we're going to talk to you about managing your data and the sources of information. Okay. So in order to, it's all well and good to kind of say, okay, well, how long are we going to trust them for? How much are we going to trust them for? You need information in order to make that decision. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about that. Okay. How do you get information? We're going to give you some websites that are useful in terms of, regardless of whether you work in consumer or whether you work in trade, some websites that are useful in terms of getting information. We're going to start talking to you. We touch on this in a couple of different modules, but we're going to start talking to you about credit application forms. Okay, where can you get some information? You can ask for it on your credit application form or your new business form to give it a more positive spin. And that's also a theme that we will have throughout the course of credit and collections can sometimes be seen as a bit negative. It's putting orders on hold, it's bad debts, it's writing things off. There's an awful lot of good stuff that goes on in the credit and collections business as well. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about how to kind of market that. But I mean, to stay on point in terms of where you get your information, one of the things you can do is you can quite simply ask for it. So we're gonna start that discussion. It carries on to a couple of different modules, but we're going to start the discussion about what to have on your credit application form and why. And we're going to talk to you about kind of proper record keeping, keeping that well stored, and what are the logic behind it at its most basic. The key reason for keeping good records, both in collections and in credit, is okay, if somebody's off for the day, that somebody can make a decision and they have good notes and good information and can make a decision even without the person actually being there. So that's the first 4 modules, so the first month, I suppose. I'll take a pause for a moment there and see, does anybody have any questions? And we're good? Okay. So quick check on the time. Okay, we're not too bad. Okay. Week 5 is your first assignment. Okay. So we're going to have a little bit of a break from the lectures in week 5. We're going to move on to your first assignment. Then in week 6, we have what is known as right first time. Okay, so okay. We have what right first time. So that's a very a key philosophy that we have throughout the course is get things right and get them right first time. If you do get them right first time, your opportunities to get for on-time payment is significantly greater than if you have errors here, errors there, mistakes there. Even if they're not caused by anyone in your team or in your department, errors lead to delay in payment. Okay. So there is a list of questions that we are going to be asking you, which is very useful at the beginning of week 6, which basically asks, okay, do you know who your customers are? Do you have a way of contacting your customers? If a customer places an order, how does that order get shipped? How does it get invoiced? How does the invoice get from being an order to actually reaching a statement. How do you send out your statements? How do you deal with partial deliveries? How do you deal with disputes? If money comes in, how do you make sure it goes to the right account? How do you get sure it gets allocated the right invoice? And if the answer to any of those, there's about 14, 15 questions at the beginning of week 6. If the answer to any of those questions, I don't know, or I don't have a way of ensuring that happens, the likelihood of something going wrong, which then, as I said, translates to money not arriving on time, is significantly greater. So we're going to take you through some of those types of things. Okay. We're going to talk to you about invoices. All right. So invoice is one of your key tools to getting yourself paid on time. No, it usually when you go to a customer, if the customer hasn't got the invoice, you're not getting paid. Okay. So it's kind of, don't have the invoice. Okay. Now that's one of the reasons that you may delay. Another reason will be, okay, well, I'm the customer. I do have the invoice, but I don't understand the information on it. Okay. So either too much information has been put on it or too little information has been put on it. Or your layout of your invoice is so messy that your customer is going to say, okay, in accounts payable, they're going to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to deal with that later. I'm going to wait till I have all my other jobs done, and then I'm going to do it. So you go to the bottom of the pile. So we're going to talk to you about how to have your issue. Sorry, combining the two words there. We can talk to you about how to have your invoices clear and legible so that your customers put them to the top of the pile and not the bottom of the pile. We're going to talk to you about statements. Okay, so I've definitely seen this somewhere in my credit collections journey. I saw a copy of I saw a statement, and it had a column for 720 plus. Okay, so it had current 1 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, and onwards, all the way to 720, which is 2 years. Okay. Now the problem with having your statement looking like that is you're dropping a bit of a hint to the customer that there are customers somewhere on your ledger that have owed you money for 2 years. Okay, that's what you're kind of suggesting. And if I get to the end of the month and I have €1,000 left and I have two suppliers looking for money and both of them are owed €1,000, I'm probably more likely to pay the person that has a statement that just says current and overdue rather than the person that has 60 plus, 90 plus, 180 plus, onwards, because it kind of suggests, well, I'll probably get away with it a bit more if the statement looks like that than if the statement immediately just flags as overdue. Okay, so we're going to talk to you about all that in week 6. Week 7, we are going to talk to you. This covers, if I remember correctly, we have this over 2 weeks. Yeah, so it's over 2 weeks with an assignment in the middle. So we're going to talk to you about how to open new accounts. No, sorry, we're not on that yet. Week 7 is opening new accounts. Okay, so what are we going to talk to you about? We're going to begin to start moving into the kind of credit risk assessment phase of the course. Okay, so we're going to start talking to you about low-level credit risk assessment. And at its most basic, the first questions you're going to be asking are kind of, who am I lending money to? Okay, so you're providing a service or you're providing a product today. The customer can enjoy that product or service today. And what you are saying to yourself is, okay, 30 days time or 60 days time or maybe longer, we're going to come look for the money. Okay, only then does the customer owe us the money. So an important thing to ask yourselves there is, well, who am I lending to? Is it a sole trader? Okay, if it's a sole trader and they default, if that person is driving around in a nice new car, in theory, you can go after that new car and try to use it to discharge the debt. Okay, not quite as simple as that, but in theory, you could do that. If, however, it's a limited company and the director is driving around in a nice new car, if that nice new car is registered in the director's name and not in the company's name, you're not going to be able to touch it. Okay, so the key thing is, okay, well, who are we actually lending the money to? Okay, we're going to start talking to you about the trade applications forms. We're going to go into a bit more detail there. We're going to be saying, okay, well, what are we going to ask information? What sort of information are we going to ask? And why are we going to ask it? And for me, there's 3 key things in an application form that I'm looking to find out. I'm looking to find out as much as I can so I can come up with a good idea as to how risky the customer is to deal with. So a lot of questions will be linked to that. I'll be looking to remove reasons for not paying. Okay, so I'll ask questions like, okay, do you have a PO system? Okay, because that way if they tick no, and then they come back a week later and say, oh, well, I can't pay you on time because I have no PO. I say, well, it says here on the form that you don't have a PO system. I'll ask questions like, how do you want to receive your statements? How do you want to receive your invoices? If the invoices are all coming in by post and they're supposed to be going into some central email box because we're dealing with a paperless office. If you do it the wrong way, you're going to inevitably have delays. And the third thing I'm going to be asking is lots of contact information. Okay, so if things go wrong, am I going to be able to call, email, and chase not one but a number of people in order to get payment? Okay. So we're going to talk to you about things like that. Talk to you about trade references, okay? So what to do with them, how to get them, and things like that. We'll talk to you about consumer application forms. So we're going to be it's not limited to trade. Obviously, different questions are asked when you're dealing with consumers. You'll be asking about things like childcare costs and mortgages and car loans, credit cards, that kind of stuff, income coming in, that kind of stuff. So different questions to the ones you'd be asking under trade. And we'll give you some tips. We do this a couple of times throughout the module. We're going to give you some low-level, easy tips as to how to quickly be able to assign risk levels to your accounts. Okay, how to have a scenario where you can just glance at whatever the line of credit is that you've extended and say, okay, that's a low risk, it's a medium risk, or it's a high risk. Okay, so we have all of that meaty stuff in week 7. Okay, and then week 8 is an assignment. I'll take the opportunity there to pause for a moment to see if anyone has any questions before we get to week 9. Lovely, we're good. Okay, so week 9 is the first part of a 2-part journey. Okay, so we're really getting into some nitty gritty here at this stage. Okay, so we're going to be talking to you about opening new accounts, and I suppose more particularly how we're going to be doing some sort of risk assessment on these accounts. Okay, so we cover these off in week 9 and also again in week 10. So what we do in week 9 is we start you off with some of the easier things to be looking out for. We start getting more numerical in week 9. We're going to be showing you how to calculate gross profit. Okay. Okay. So we're going to start doing that, and we're going to be comparing it from one year to the next to get to see what sort of pattern we're beginning to see in terms of the customer over the last kind of 2-3 years. Okay. We're going to be talking about profit and loss accounts and income statements. Okay, so that gives you some good insights as to the trading position of the customer. You can compare sales revenue from one year to another. You can look at the gross profit, the margins, the net profit, things like that. Okay. And not all of the information in there is necessarily going to be bad. Even if you see a drop in something, what that leads to is it leads to questions. Okay, so you begin to start asking questions, and with bigger companies particularly, the answer to those questions might well be in the notes of the account. Okay, so something went down significantly from one year to the next, or something went up. There may well be a note next to it saying this is covered in note 1 or this is covered in note 2. So you will go into that particular section, and you can read it, and if you're satisfied with what you've seen, you say, okay, well, that explains that. Or if you're not satisfied with what it is, it gives you an opportunity maybe to ask some more questions before you extend a line of credit to that particular customer. We're going to take you through what is going to appear on the balance sheet. Okay, so balance sheet will give you some good insights into things like fixed assets and current assets. They are certainly relevant if you work in our line of business. Okay, because in the event of things going dramatically wrong, you may be looking towards some of those fixed assets to try to recover some of your debt. The more detailed accounts will even go into things like accounts receivable. Okay, so that does some of the work for you. Okay, it'll give you some information as to, okay, what are our accounts receivable looking like, and you might even get some age debt analysis. Okay, so I mean, one of their assets is the debtors ledger. Okay, and you'll get some indication as to what their age debt analysis are. They themselves good at collecting debt? There's no point in them having a big fat juicy debtors ledger where you can say, oh, there's loads of money due to come into this customer, but then you see that most of it is 180, 270, or 360 plus. I've just had a message saying my internet connection's gone a little bit unstable. Are people still able to hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear you.
terrific. Thank you very much. So those are some of the things we're going to be covering off in week 9. The final couple of things, we'll be doing bank reconciliations and stock valuations. And stock valuations in particular begin to feed into some of the stuff we look at in week 10 and also week 11. Okay. So week 10, we're going to continue on. This is opening new accounts. So this is part, sorry, it's not opening new accounts at all. It's how to, sorry, the topic there is incorrect. It's how to read a set of accounts. Okay. So week 9 is how to read a set of accounts, part 1. Week 10 is how to read a set of accounts, part 2. Sorry, I need to correct that. Okay. But what are we covering off in week 10? We're starting off by talking about the trading and cash operating cycle, okay? Which is very, very, very important for us in particular. Okay, so if companies go bankrupt, it is usually because they are not able to manage their trade and cash operating cycle. Okay, they have money going out faster than they have it coming in. They have it going on for an extended period of time. They might be able to bridge that gap through overdrafts or loans or something like that, but they can't get a handle on it, and ultimately that causes significant problems that they are not able to continue business, and that is very important for us to be able to recognize. Okay, so we're going to talk to you about that. I mean, I suppose a good scenario I heard on the radio during the week is there was somebody talking on the radio about making Hurleys. Okay, so you'd have a scenario where wood might come in and be out in a garage, then okay, that represents a cost. Okay, people have to go and buy that wood. Okay, so the wood is there in the garage. They then need to go and turn that into Hurleys. Okay, so there is a process to turn them into Hurleys. Might only take 30 minutes to make one Hurley, but that is still there is time and money being gobbled up there. Then you have Hurleys sitting in the corner, maybe for a number of weeks. That is money that is stock. That is money that is not being realized. It is cash that is not being realized, and as a result, it's stuck there in the process. So it is very important for companies to be able to get their products kind of in and out in the quickest possible fashion. It'll vary from product to product. I mean, another example might be the markets that you might see at the weekends that make pancakes. Okay, they might have bought the ingredients for the pancakes on a Friday. They might turn them into pancakes on a Saturday, and then money's coming in. It's tap 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 all day long on Saturday. So that's a fairly short cycle. Okay, but other products may be a lot longer. So we're going to talk to you about how you look at, understand, and ask questions in relation to that. How am I doing for time? I'm at 12. We talked about cash forecasting. So very important if companies are going to survive, which is not easy. The right amount of money needs to be coming in and the right amount of money needs to be coming out, and it needs to be going in and out at the right intervals in order for the company to have enough cash to continue trading. And that is very important for us in the credit and collections business. We're going to talk about the impact of VAT on forecasting. Okay, so VAT is not spread evenly. Okay, um, it arrives in and has an impact on the on companies' cash flows once a year. We're going to talk to you about the analysis and financial statements. Okay, so we're going to talk to you how to calculate liquidity ratios. We're going to talk to you how to calculate profitability ratios and how to calculate management efficiency ratios, which liquidity one is particularly key because that gives you an indication as to where is their money. Okay, so for short term wise, very important one. Profitability, more medium term is the company going to continue trading and going to continue to be profitable for a number of years? And the management efficiency ratios, how well is the company actually being run? Is each employee on average making money for the company, or is each employee losing money for the company? So we're going to talk to you all that. So big meaty stuff in weeks 9 and 10 in particular. Okay. And then we're going to move into the more high level kind of credit assessment. But I will pause there for a moment and ask, are there any questions that anyone might have in terms of particularly weeks 9 and week 10?
Not yet.
Oh, they're coming. Okay, very good. So week 11, where am I now? There we are, week 11. Okay, so we begin to start kind of closing off this particular area in week 11. Okay, because we have I think that's the last one, is it? Yes, it is. Yeah. So is in week 11. We're going to close and bring it all together. We're going to start talking to you about looking at payment performance. Okay, from a risk perspective. So we've gone through all of the stuff that we did in week 9 and 10. We're kind of saying, okay, now what is a customer's payment performance and how can we have a look at it? And we give a couple of examples in there. How can we have a look at it and try to decide in terms of ourselves, how well or badly are we likely to be paid by this particular customer? We're going to talk to you about the 4 C's.
He's gone again, is he?
Is that me or Paul?
No, I think
Paul.
Paul.
Back to
Okay.
He's gone.
Paul,
We
yeah,
lost you there.
you
Am I
vanished
gone
there
now?
for a while. Yeah,
Oh,
you were
am I gone? Am
gone.
I?
Yeah,
Yeah,
only
Okay.
for a minute.
You're
You're
back
back now.
now.
You're
Back
back.
now, yeah.
Am I back?
You are
Yeah,
back. Yeah.
Okay.
the
Sorry,
four
the warning.
T's.
Warning system. Four C's of credit. Sorry. Okay, if it goes again, I'll just go off camera and hopefully that may change it. So we're going to talk about the four C's of credit, which include things like the character of the customer. So there is a saying, "I will do business with anybody I can trust." Okay. We're going to talk about some of the conditions that exist among that may impact on whether or not we can do business together. A good example being the airline business and COVID. Is there something like that can absolutely shut down the business that the customer is in that may have an impact? We'll talk about quantitative and qualitative risk assessments. So the quantitative side being numbers only. Okay, so we will line up our numbers and decide, okay, does that make sense? But we will also do a qualitative assessment that'll ask questions beyond the numbers, or will ask questions of the numbers, and make decisions from there. And then we kind of finalize and kind of go through, okay, well, so based on that, how much can a company potentially owe us at any one time? We'll use the ratios to compare companies and say, okay, in this particular business, does this look like a particularly healthy ratio or a particularly unhealthy ratio? And we bring all of that together, and we ultimately ask the question, well, is there any risk of the company over trading and overextending themselves and putting themselves at risk? If they put themselves at risk, if we've lent them money, then we are at risk as well. Okay. Okay, so after that, there is a break, although I'm afraid I use the break in a kind of loose sense of the word, because the break for week 12 is an assignment. Okay. And then we get into the last kind of couple of weeks. So we're into kind of the second half of November at this stage, or even into December, heading down towards Christmas. Now, after kind of weeks 9, 10, and 11, you might come to the conclusion and say, "Oh my God, there's an awful lot of risk out there, and there's an awful lot of things I need to calculate, and is it worth extending credit at all?" Which is a fair question. But there are things you can put in place, which we'll cover off in week 13, to help you, should you decide to take any sort of risk when it comes to extending credit. So there's a couple of things that we can help you along with, and some suggestions that we have for you in week 13. One is the contact strategy. So how do you contact your customers, and how often and what way do you set yourselves up to allow yourself to reassure yourselves that they are going to pay you on time? We'll talk to you about customer visits, okay, and how to actually manage them, and how you can potentially go and visit your customer, and things you can learn, and discussions that you may have with your customer that can help negate any risk. We'll talk to you about some of the documents that you can have. So things like letters of credit, whereby you will extend your credit to the customer, but you will also come to an agreement with your bank that in the event that there is a default, you can activate your letter of credit, and as a result, you can discharge the debt. We'll take you through some of the legal systems in the country. So let's assume things go wrong. What sort of documents are you going to need if you're going to go down the legal route? How long is the legal route likely to take? Can you represent yourself, or do you need to hire local counsel? So a country by country guide, not obviously for 200 countries in the world, but for some of the biggest ones, what is the legal system like? And then we'll also talk to you about credit insurance, okay? Because you could have a scenario where you said, okay, this is risky, excuse me, but maybe we can spread the risk by taking out some credit insurance for some of the riskier decisions that we're making. There will be some where the credit insurance companies say, no, not on your life. We're not backing that up. That again would be a warning sign as to whether or not you want to make that decision. But there are risks you can take, and where you can buy credit insurance for a fee, and if things go wrong, you can then activate that credit insurance, and the debt will be discharged. Okay. And then lastly, last couple of ones, so we begin to kind of start winding down as we get, the longest, meatiest modules are kind of in and around kind of weeks 9, 10, 11, around that. We do kind of ease you out of the course as well as easing you into the course. So the last kind of couple of things that we're going to be covering off is some of the reporting and KPIs, with the philosophy being of what gets measured gets done. So we're going to talk to you about some of the things that you need to be checking every day, every week, every month, or even more often, how to measure them, how to report on them. There is a negative connotation a lot of times to credit collections. You're dealing with things like overdues, percentage 60 plus, write-offs, bad debts. But there's a much more positive way. You're also doing an awful lot, as Declan said at the beginning, an awful lot of very, very good work. So we're going to talk to you about how to report on a positive way and how to ensure that the good work you're doing is being flagged. And we're finally going to talk to you about the DSO calculation. So it may well be something. I know Declan mentioned it earlier on. It may well be something that you're already calculating. But if you're not, at its most basic, there's a number of ways of calculating. But at its most basic, the best way to explain it is DSO is days sales outstanding. It's how long does it take you to get paid? Okay. So say you do a big Christmas campaign and a lot of money comes in December. How quickly is it before you actually get paid? Let's say you do 10,000 euros worth of business every month. Your debtor's ledger is 25,000. It kind of, as a very rough rule of thumb, suggests that it's taking you 2.5 months to get paid. Okay, which is pretty good if your credit terms are maybe, let's say your credit terms are 70 days and the money's coming in at 75, that's not bad at all. However, if your credit terms are 30 days and it's taking you 75 to get paid, there is room for improvement there. That's a very basic calculation, but just to give you a rough idea as to what it is that we're doing. How am I for time? I got about 5 minutes left. Week 15, as I do remember, is the final assignment that will be due for the course, which I think takes us into the Christmas period and into early January. But I'm open to correction on that point. So hopefully hopefully as Declan said, I haven't scared you away. There's a lot in it. It is intense. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But that is not accidental. It's designed to kind of have an intense period of study, assignments, and work. There are short tests as you're going along for you to complete. But it's an intense period of work, intense period of study. You learn an awful lot that you can apply to your day-to-day business as you're going along. And look forward to going on the journey with you.
Thanks, Paul. That is, a whistle-stop tour of what we call credit management. Let me press stop now.